Hi, this is meteorologist Jim Cantori in Biloxi, Mississippi. When is it going to end? That's what residents are asking us here. We'll give you a live report on how this area has been hit very hard by Hurricane George. That's next. Stay tuned.
We'll be hearing in just a few minutes from Jim Cantori on the very latest around the Gulfport, Biloxi area. Already, George has been a hurricane for over 11 days, looking for a home. Finally found one in the area of the Mississippi Gulf Coast, but unfortunately left a lot of people without a home over the last couple of days. Let's bring you up to date on the very latest. The satellite perspective now showing that once again George has moved inland, but not by very far. We're still experiencing winds in excess of 75 to 80 miles an hour. We'll see a slow decrease in the winds, but also see a lot of rain yet to come throughout the Gulf Coast states. The very latest information indicating near Gulfport, Mississippi is where the center of the storm, the impact throughout much of the southeast now. Winds 90 miles an hour, nearly stationary. We'll be describing what impact that will be making over the next couple of days for the Gulf Coast region. People in 4 states are dealing with the impact of Hurricane George at this hour. Heavy rain has flooded roads, stranded families in that area, washed out part of Interstate 10 in Florida. In fact, 350,000 people are without power. They continue with high winds, brought down some of the power lines, putting once again more than over 1/3 of a million people without power. And more than 1.5 million people were told to leave the Gulf Coast region, leading to what one state police official called the largest evacuation ever achieved. A very fine job by all the officials and all the residents in that area to get out of the wrath of George. To give you an update situation, what's going on, he has put in a lot of miles and a lot of hours with this storm from Florida to the Gulf Coast. The very latest from Gulfport, Mississippi with Jim Cantori. Jim?
Dennis, thank you very much. I'd also like to extend my kudos to the folks not only in Florida, but up here in Mississippi, Alabama, and Florida. I'll say one thing, folks. I'm not standing out here for my health. I'm trying to let you know why we want you to evacuate. Well, let me show you why we evacuated Biloxi and came up here to Gulfport last night. Here are the scenes shot just an hour and a half ago, and you can see what happened. Now, let me give you an idea of what's happened here. We are on the western side of the storm as of this morning, but where the eye came ashore was just to the west of Biloxi where this video was shot, and you can see what the result was. We've had an increase.
Having a little bit of difficulty hearing the transmission from Jim. Of course, we'll keep you updated on what's going on once we patch up a little bit of the transmission. As you would imagine, in a stormy environment like that, getting all the information up through the satellite and back to you via the satellite system can be a little bit rough sometimes. Meanwhile, we'll talk about Louisiana has escaped the brunt of this particular storm, Hurricane George. However, it looks like New Orleans Mayor Mark Morale says what damage there was necessitated an indefinite mandatory curfew.
We remain under a mandatory curfew, and our shelters remain open, and we're not allowing people to leave. All of the main roadways into the city remain closed because we still have gusts, we still have rain, and since the storm apparently has slowed down or even stalled, it appears as though it's going to affect us throughout the day. We have downed trees, downed power lines. We also have in the lakefront area, Lake Pontchartrain has come over the seawall, and the New Orleans Lakefront Airport, which is a airport primarily used by private planes, has some flooding and is somewhat underwater.
And that hearing from the mayor of New Orleans on the latest on what Hurricane George has done to around the New Orleans area. We have reestablished our feed with Jim Cantori in Gulfport, Mississippi. Jim, if you're still able, there we go. Jim, if you're able to give us an update now that we've reestablished communications with you.
Hello, testing, 1, 2, 3. Okay, we again are having some problems with the water getting into the microphone. That does occasionally happen, but I can tell you one thing, the rain just continues to come on down here, Dennis. Very, very heavy rain. That has been the big story. Some estimates have been anywhere from 15 to 20 inches of rain, and as long as this storm sits here and spins, flooding is going to be a major problem. Of all the problems that we've had, flooding is the big one, as you saw from the video and from what I'm telling you. Just right around me here, you can see how the water is coming down so hard that it doesn't have a chance to run off anywhere. So we have a tremendous amount of flooding going on, and a lot of roads impassable from Hattiesburg all the way down to Gosha, Van Cleve, Pascagoula, Ocean Shores, Biloxi, all these areas very, very affected by the storm. You're looking out at pictures of the rain coming down very hard right now, and some of the damage has been done to the shingles in some of these hotels and also to some of the nearby buildings. So just a miserable day here, and unfortunately now the evacuation orders have been continued to tomorrow morning. Not the evacuation, the curfew orders have been continued until 6 o'clock tomorrow morning. People have to stay in their hotels, they have to stay in their shelters, they cannot go back to their homes. The time now has been extended from 6 o'clock tonight to 6 a.m. tomorrow morning. Back to you, Dennis.
Thank you very much. Jim Cantori, wet and windy Gulfport, Mississippi. Appreciate your report. Stay safe and try to stay dry in this scenario. As we bring into the fold right now, Dr. Steve Lyons, our hurricane specialist, to give us some insight on this storm right now and what we can expect the next couple of days. How about if you let us know what we can expect now that it's moved inland, but literally stalled out?
It sure has, Dennis, and it's stalled right on the coast, which means it's not going to weaken as fast as it would if it were well inland, because half the circulation is still out over the Gulf of Mexico. So we're going to have a slow, miserable decline in intensity the next 24 hours. It'll probably become less than a hurricane in another 12 hours or so, but still remain a strong tropical storm and still produce a lot of rain.
Okay, let's go ahead and outline the expected impact from here on out then for, again, the next 6 to 12 hours. Let's take it from Pensacola back through Mobile Bay, even into Biloxi, Gulfport, and around New Orleans, what they can expect for the next 6 to 12 hours.
Okay, Pensacola area, you're going to still have some large surf, some above average sea level there, some showers coming in, especially in the Pensacola area between Panama City and Pensacola. Some surge. Winds will be gusty but not extreme. The Mobile, Biloxi area, you're going to still have some high storm surge there. Water's already come into the bay. Plus it's raining very heavily, very strong winds in there, gusting well over hurricane force the next 6 hours, and surge will remain in there on the order of 4 to 6 feet at least, even though it was higher than that earlier.
And I guess another impact that we might be felt when there's a landfalling hurricane, usually there's a lot of interaction with the land, and the end result is the possibility of even some tornadoes.
That's right. We've seen a lot of tornadoes out there already in the system yesterday, last night, and earlier this morning. And that severe weather is going to continue to march off to the northeast. So some people off to the northeast are going to have to watch out as some of these bands sweep out, even though the center stays behind.
In fact, a tornado watch out for portions of Mississippi, Alabama, and the Florida Panhandle. Also another concern, not only for the immediate future, where we can see some of the rainfall totals in excess of 10 to 12, even approaching 15 inches, as we can see on this Doppler radar estimated rainfall throughout much of the Gulf Coast region. In fact, up through 8 o'clock this morning, it looks like the hardest hit area, the Florida Panhandle and extreme southern areas of Alabama.
That's right. This was associated with some very heavy rain bands that came in on the far right side of the hurricane as it made landfall. Now, of course, the strongest and heaviest rain, I should say, not the strongest, is over in this area, and you just saw Jim Cantori right in the heart of it, and now that is really becoming a major problem there as well.
Well, as we can see on this radar display, even the rain pouring up, and fairly heavy rain I might add, up into Montgomery, approaching Birmingham, looping back towards Jackson. So let me take you one more step. We took us through 6 to 12 hours. Let's take it for the next couple of days. This is slowed up. It could be an impact with heavy rainfall.
It sure could. The circulation's not forecast to go very far, maybe up into this area in 3 days, according to the National Hurricane Center's latest advisory. There is a scenario that would take it a little faster because the westerlies are up in this area, but right now it's sitting between a ridge of high pressure on both sides of it, just locked in between it, not expected to go very far. But Birmingham, Montgomery, you're very close to some severe weather there and some heavy thunderstorms. Birmingham, you're going to get some high clouds and potential light drizzle out of it, becoming showery later tonight. And the moisture coming up out of the Gulf of Mexico is going to continue to pump in there, and with the surface heating out there, you could get some severe weather later this afternoon and tomorrow.
So still some more beach erosion, still some strong winds and heavy rainfall along the coast, and as we move over the next couple of days, a lot of rain throughout the deep south.
That's right. Rain continuing, everything else slowly diminishing in intensity.
All right. Thank you, Steve. Steve's been putting a lot of hours with us, too, on this particular hurricane, watching it for days on end. And we hope you'll continue to monitor the Weather Channel right here on your cable network. If you're not able to do that, we suggest our internet site at weather.com for the very latest on what's going on. And for what's going on elsewhere across the country, of water crash, not over a beach, but across streets in Biloxi, Mississippi. George has made its landfall in that area this morning. Now 4 states are feeling the flooding effects of the hurricane's slow movement. Good afternoon, and thank you so much for joining us here on the Weather Channel for this special edition of covering Hurricane George. I'm Dennis Smith. Again, the impact has been felt all throughout the Deep South. 4 states are dealing with the impact of Hurricane George at this hour. In fact, heavy rain has flooded roads, stranded families, and washed out part of Interstate 10 in Florida. 380,000 people are without power at this hour, as leaving customers in the dark, and more than 1.5 million people were told to leave the Gulf Coast, leading to what one state police official has called the largest evacuation ever achieved. And a good job to all those along the Gulf Coast in heeding the warnings for this particular storm. And I know it's frustrating before you get back into your homes, but we want to make sure everything settles back down to get the all clear before you venture on back. We've been covering this storm from Florida, actually all the way out to the Caribbean, through Florida and along the Gulf Coast. And to focus in on what's going on along the Gulf Coast right now, we're calling our own Jim Cantori in Gulfport, Mississippi. Jim, what's the latest?
Well, Dennis, unfortunately, you mentioned those 1.5 million folks that evacuated the Gulf Coast. At least here in Mississippi, for Jackson and Harrison County, they're going to have to wait a little while to get back because the curfew has been extended from 6 o'clock tonight on into 6 a.m. tomorrow morning. So they want those people to stay intact and not venture out to check out homes. And they're taking this very, very serious. They do not want you out on the road. There's a lot of work to be done. There's a lot of structural damage to homes and businesses. And there's a tremendous amount of tree and power line damage. You can't get that perspective here, but you can see a few of the things as my cameraman, Blair Carper, pans around. Now let me show you what's happening down in Biloxi. Now this was just about 2.5 hours ago, where you can see some of the pictures here. And now this is an area that saw the eastern side of the storm center, where you would get the surge. And this surge, accompanied by the very, very heavy rainfall, has caused us some big problems here on US 90, which is the main road that parallels the beach. Also, several of the parking lots there, the marinas, just rocking waves and tremendous amounts of flooding. And that's really the story here, Dennis, is the incredible flooding, at least from my vantage point. But we really have not had a break at all in the rain. Yes, the wind has let up a little bit, and we have wind basically out of the west, but all in all, just a continuation of this relentless rain. And that's obviously got folks just saying, hey, will you please end? We want to get back to our home. Back to you, Dennis.
Thank you very much, Jim Cantori in Gulfport, Mississippi. We appreciate your report. Not too far away in Biloxi, Mississippi, we have an updated report from Chris Chimura on what's going on there. Chris?
Dennis, Jim's thoughts and Jim's beliefs about this area are absolutely on target. That as the storm surge continues to make its way into this region. We had a reprieve from that relentless rain hours ago when the eye moved across an eerie calm in this region as people started to mill about and begin to wonder exactly what kind of damage this area had seen. Some people thought it was even over. However, they learned very quickly from their neighbors and from the news media that the storm had only half had its target set here and is now beginning to move its way across and is now doing so. You can feel the winds here begin to pick up as they move more westerly, and you can see in the background here there are some traffic signals which are beginning to sway and are being ripped apart by the winds. That right behind it is underwater. That whole region there, yards of water, that area is supposed to be dry. So here the flooding is also a major concern. Some estimates had said 20 inches of rain in this region. However, at the Air Force Base just down the road, about 7¼ inches of rain so far. There, believe it or not, a wind gust measured of 170 miles an hour. That in the overnight hours when the wind was howling, and it was just a mess here as the weather was worsening and then eventually got to that calm, and now we're at round number 2 here. Hopefully Hurricane George will begin to make that northern track and do so very rapidly so that they can get out of the woods here and get out of those shelters and begin the process of cleaning up. For now, we're live in Biloxi with the latest. I'm Chris Kimura. Dennis, now it's back to you in the Forecast Center.
Thank you very much, Chris, keeping us updated from his perspective in Biloxi, Mississippi. Another area impacted was around the New Orleans, Louisiana area. In fact, most of the New Orleans streets look like this morning, look like ghost towns as people feared what George had to offer. The city is getting rain, but not as bad as neighbors to the east. Some neighbors are flooding, but by midday, people were able to take to the streets with a need for some kind of rain gear out and about. Although much of Louisiana escaped the brunt of Hurricane George, New Orleans mayor says damage in the area makes it necessary to continue a mandatory curfew.
We remain under a mandatory curfew, and our shelters remain open, and we're not allowing people to leave. All of the main roadways into the city remain closed because we still have gusts, we still have rain, and since the storm apparently has slowed down or even stalled, it appears as though it's going to affect us throughout the day. We have downed downed trees, downed power lines. We also have in the lakefront area, Lake Pontchartrain has come over the seawall, and the New Orleans Lakefront Airport, which is a airport primarily used by private planes, has some flooding and is somewhat underwater.
Again, the mayor of New Orleans, Louisiana, commenting on the mandatory curfew that continues for that particular area because of Hurricane George. Now joining us is our hurricane specialist, Dr. Steve Lyons. First of all, let's get everybody on exactly where the track is. Show everybody what's happening. It's near Gulfport, Mississippi. Still showing up with 90-mile-an-hour winds, nearly stationary. That has come on in and kind of stalled on out. And as we look at the satellite perspective, Steve, give us some insight on what you see structurally a little bit different with this storm.
Well, now it's lost its eye. We have a circulation center, but there is no eye wall. But it's almost stationary in the general vicinity of the Biloxi area for all practical purposes. And all the real heavy rain is basically to the east of the Louisiana border, which is good for Louisiana and not so good for some of the other people. It extends all the way into the Florida Panhandle near Panama City.
In fact, what would you expect the impact from that area of Louisiana to Florida, let's say over the next 6 to 12 hours?
Well, right now, high surf, beach erosion, surf and water levels 2 feet above normal over here in the Pensacola area, especially out in the barrier islands. That will continue. This greater area, we could have as much as 12 inches or more within the next 24 hours of some severe weather, tornado potential, and next 12 hours it'll be very windy there. One other thing in here that I should probably add, oftentimes it takes a while for the rivers to fill up and flood, and we should see some river flooding. And that river flooding could be significant in residential areas and in other economic areas that are going to be affected by those overspills of rivers. For example, we got a message about the Leaf River out of the Mobile, Alabama Weather Service Forecast Office, how it's going to top its banks sometime tomorrow. So that impact won't be today, regardless of what the rain is doing, but tomorrow. Then in the greater New Orleans area, northwest winds up to tropical storm force, some rain, but really they have been spared most of the brunt of the storm, so they're not going to see too much. The storm surge in the Mobile area will be slow to retreat. We're going to still have a storm surge on the order of 4 to 7 feet today, with winds gusting well above hurricane force through the afternoon and this evening. Another
concern as it makes landfall is the tornadoes and tornado watch. We understand this has been extended now until 1 a.m. on Tuesday morning, so the possibility of tornadoes still in Alabama, Mississippi, and the Florida Panhandle. And Steve, it looks like this is, as we're seeing some of the rainfall totals, very impressive, and that may add to some flooding even in those areas of the Florida Panhandle down through Mobile.
Yeah, they sure are very horrible rainfall totals, and we're going to get more. It's raining anywhere from about 1/2 inch to 2 inches per hour, depending on where you're looking. You can see on the radar here, mostly the green and dark green areas, that's about 1/2 inch to 1 inch per hour. The yellow and red areas are about 1 to 2 inches per hour. Of course, you can see if you're one location, you have one of these bands coming up, you may have 3 to 4 hours of continuous rain of 2 to 4 inches, and that can really add up in a hurry.
The immediate coastline for the next couple of hours in. Storm surge still winding down, wind slow to come down, rain still coming in, and for the next couple of days, much of it looks like eastern Mississippi, Alabama, and eventually on up into Georgia will be impacted by heavy, possibly flooding rains.
That's correct, including some of the rivers.
All righty, thank you very much. Dr. Steve Lyons has been keeping us updated on this particular storm, and we will continue through the afternoon and evening hours to keep you updated with Hurricane George. If you're unfortunate to tune into your Weather Channel cable network, we suggest that you tap into the internet. We've got information available for you there too on weather.com. To show you what's going on elsewhere across the country, once again we return you to the studio with Mike Bono.
Thanks a lot, Dennis. This weather center is even 20s in northern New England. If that doesn't make the leaves change, I don't know what will. And you're going to get into peak color in a lot of New England, northern lakes, and the Rockies in many areas.
Hurricane George creating havoc for the last 11 days. We've been watching it closely here at the Weather Channel. 11 days as being a hurricane, finally beaching itself this morning in the Mississippi coast. And because of its impact, over 1.5 million people evacuated the area from Louisiana to the Florida Panhandle. And even at this hour, more than 300,000 electric customers are without power. And it appears flooding may continue to be a problem, not allowing a lot of those folks to head back home for yet a few more hours, if not for a couple more days. The very latest on Hurricane George puts it once again located very close to Biloxi, Mississippi on our latest update from the National Hurricane Center. 30.5 north, 88.9 west. Two things I want to point out. A diminishing of the wind. 75-mile-an-hour winds now. Still a hurricane, but hanging on. And a slow northward drift at about 3 miles an hour. The combination of those two will continue to create some problems with coastal beach erosion, flooding, heavy rainfall, and it looks like heavy rainfall will be the order of the next couple of days as well. Hurricane warnings remain in effect from Grand Isle, Louisiana to Destin, Florida, with once again those conditions still buffeting the coastline with near or above hurricane force winds. Tropical storm warnings continue for the Louisiana coast all the way back to around Morgan City. We've been keeping you updated on the scenario from sections of the Gulf Coast. For the very latest on what's going on, we'll be focusing our attention on New Orleans, Louisiana with Bill Keneally, and to Kristen Dodd in Mobile, Alabama. Kristen, give us an update on the very latest.
Well, Dennis, we're still getting pelted by plenty of rain here, and that is going to be the huge story over the next 24 hours here in Mobile. In the past 24 hours, the strong winds have really taken their toll. We have a lot of downed trees all over Mobile. We're in the downtown area, and you can see some of the trees and also some of the bushes that have been uprooted. Look at the floodwaters here for the museum, and we have seen plenty of that over the past day or so as the rain has come in, the storm surge has also come in. This museum was set to open just in 2 weeks. It doesn't look like that is going to happen, unfortunately. With that storm surge, that came in at 2 o'clock this morning and was quite high. We had several cars that were flooded out and stranded. Those continue to be sitting underwater in the downtown Mobile area. And it looks like it's going to be some time before all of this recedes, as we still have those southerly winds pumping in the water. It's not allowing it back out into the Gulf of Mexico or into Mobile Bay. Now heading over to New Orleans, we join our Bill Keneally. Bill?
Okay, thanks a lot, Kristen. Again, we're here in the winds are very strong here from the northwest. Strong is 55, 60 miles an hour. Looking back, we're looking.
Unfortunately, the perils of communicating live sometimes can do a little havoc on the microphone as well. You could see, though, that Bill Keneally was experiencing around the Lake Pontchartrain area and just east of New Orleans some winds that were up over 50 miles an hour. And also he was reporting that some of the water was continuing to be pushed in normally dry areas for perhaps people to stroll along some of the boardwalk there or some of the areas around that region to be covered up with water this afternoon. We heard from Bill Keneally in New Orleans, Louisiana, and Kristen Dodd in Mobile, Alabama. Joining us now is one of our hurricane specialists, Dr. Steve Lyons, to focus in on this particular storm. Again, let's go back to the particulars and comment, if you would, on the fact that the winds have come down a little bit and the forward movement still is pretty slow.
The forward movement is slow. We still see a very slow northward drift. Now notice the winds are down to hurricane force, minimal hurricane force. As I mentioned earlier this morning, typically 6 to 9 hours after a landfalling hurricane of this intensity, most of the winds will drop below hurricane force or just to hurricane force. So these strong hurricane force winds that we saw at landfall are not going to persist. However, the tropical storm force winds will persist through the next 24 hours or so. Those will be much slower to go down.
Now this is a map indicating the wind gusts as of this hour. Again, there's a few locations where even in central Alabama, Mississippi, topping over 50 miles an hour, and that's pretty far inland.
That is correct, Dennis, and part of the reason for that is the vortex, or the circulation above the surface, is the last to spin down. So when you get thunderstorm activity, it brings those strong winds down to the ground wherever there's thunderstorm activity, and we've seen much more rain over in this area than we have, of course, over in the New Orleans area. One
of the tools that helps us here at the Weather Channel is the Doppler radar. This is the National Weather Service Doppler radar out of the area along the Gulf Coast. in this colorful display, but you can enlighten us a little bit on what it's actually telling us right now.
Okay, what you're looking at here, this is the New Orleans radar site. Here's the Gulf of Mexico is out in here south of this line here. And what you're looking at from the radar are inbound winds in blue coming in toward the radar and outbound winds in red, the scale of which is given over here. And what the first thing we notice is the line between the two, which is called our zero isotop, is shifting north very slowly with time, indicating that the hurricane is actually moving north. It's outside the picture of this radar, but it indicates the axis of the hurricane is moving northward. The other thing we notice is fairly close to the ground, we have very strong winds out of the northeast and out of the southwest, indicating if you had thunderstorm activity or winds that come down to the surface from aloft, we could still get some very strong winds.
That's even why Bill Keneally's perspective, close to Lake Pontchartrain, and some of those winds working their way down to the surface, he might be experiencing winds up over 50 to 60 miles an hour in that area.
That, in conjunction with the lower friction coefficients over water compared to land, are the two components that would do that.
Another factor we always have to be concerned with landfalling hurricanes is the fact of tornadoes. In fact, tornado watch remains in effect for portions of Alabama, Mississippi, and the Florida Panhandle. We understand, Steve, that they've also updated it to include an area a little bit farther to the north. Already tornado warnings have been reported in Pike, Barber, and Crenshaw. They continue for Pike and Crenshaw counties at this particular hour. Another concern for our viewers and residents in that immediate area is the very heavy rainfall. This illustrates some of the rainfall totals that we've seen, again with the usage of the technology of a Doppler radar, illustrating, Steve, we have some rainfall amounts in southeast Alabama exceeding 18 to 20 inches.
That's correct, and of course keep in mind these are estimates, but they're probably reasonably close, within a few inches anyway. We'll have to see once we get some rain gauge comparisons, but first of all, the thing to keep in mind is the circulation center is somewhere over in here. And in association with that, we're getting some very high rain amounts, but most of the real heavy rain is off to the east, and that's going to persist the next 24 hours. We have a big branch of very warm, moist air coming off the Gulf, and that's moving to the north, producing this thunderstorm activity that's becoming severe as it moves toward Montgomery, and that's going to be the area that's going to be the most persistent heavy rain.
And these were the rain totals up to 8 o'clock this morning, and again, this the heaviest rain core coming in an area from Mobile to Pensacola and expanding into southern Alabama, and with that slow movement, that will continue to accent on the very heavy rainfall totals that'll end up in southern Alabama.
You're absolutely right, Dennis, and it'll continue the next 24 hours.
Big problem we got to be concerned with is flash flood watches that remain in effect for portions of Mississippi, Alabama, the Florida Panhandle, and southern Louisiana. And we urge you, if you are going to be in areas that may be prone to flooding, please do not walk or drive through the flooded waters, and drive away, never towards the flooded areas, and make sure children and pets, especially where waters can rise quickly, are away from that general area. So just a few tips to pass along to you. So again, it looks like the main focus for the next immediate couple of hours will be on the what's left of some more coastal flooding and a little bit left of the storm surge as it's winding down. The winds will slowly come down, but it looks like heavy rainfall with a slow mover is what we got to worry about.
Yes, Dennis, and keep in mind out there that it depends on the speed of motion of the circulation on how much rain we actually get. There is a scenario that takes the circulation to the northeast a little bit faster than what is currently happening. If that's the case, the rain will be a little bit less. So we're on the conservative side saying another foot is possible or so. That may not be all that much.
All right, Dr. Steve Lyons, one of our hurricane specialists, thank you so much for keeping us on your weather cable dial right here, the Weather Channel. And if you're unable to stay with us on your cable network, we urge you to check into the website weather.com for the very latest information. We return you now to the studio for updated information across the rest of the country with Bob Stokes.
Thanks a lot, Dennis. This portion of Weather Center brought to you by Advil Liquid Gel, and we've got a stationary boundary which could become the focal mechanism for some storms in and around the Kansas City area later, but dry air over the Great Lakes, and of course we're keeping you updated on Hurricane George. We've got another frontal boundary, and you see the wet weather, or at least the clouds that are streaming just ahead of this front. And notice this upper air circulation over the San Francisco Bay Area. A lot of the rain has been offshore today, but it could creep on in, and no heavy rain to deal with now. Of course, we'll We'll be keeping you posted on Hurricane George as it produces the flooding, and the frontal boundary that produced the storms in the New York City area yesterday has moved out to sea. But we do have a cooler air mass with a trough in place across the west, but still